How to think like a lawyer? Well, do lawyers think? Sometimes you might ask. It's a serious question because what this course will show you is that there is indeed a way to think like a lawyer. There is a logic to law that you need to understand and be able to apply in the labor, in particular the labor relations, labor law, employment law, sometimes it's called, field. So this will help you to think like a lawyer, and that's why I've also called it an introduction to legal skills. So to have skills you need knowledge. I will give you that knowledge, the essential knowledge, and the skills that come from that knowledge. So why do this course? I taught labor law, employment law, and labor relations to students who were not involved in the law school. In other words, not learning law, not part of the law school. And at the same time, I was a CCMA commissioner. And what I found in both situations is that both students and HR, shop stewards, etc., approached matters, disputes, in a particular way, which was basically showing that they did not understand the law or how the law worked. And so they were not able to apply the basic skills that one needs when you're faced with a legal type situation, as disputes at the CCMA, bargaining council, etc., are, and all workplace disputes. So I developed what was a tutorial for those students, and I've added and upgraded it, and so, for over many years. And basically what it means is that I will give you a tool which you'll then be able to apply to all situations, all disputes that arise in your workplace. Now that's whether you're at HR, whether you're shop stewards from management point of view, whether you're chairing a hearing, or even if you're arbitrating. So what this course does is fill in an essential gap. That's why I've called it 101. It's literally the beginning of understanding of labor law as it is applied in South Africa. So what will you learn? Well, the first thing is aspect of knowledge. You'll gain knowledge by understanding the problem-solving approach to legal analysis, and then legal problems in the context of the law applicable to a certain situation. Basically is that we don't learn law, like take a piece of legislation and learn it off by heart. What we do is we understand how to use that law, how to find it, how to use that law to apply it to solve problems. Because one way of looking at like a dismissal matter is that it's a problem solving. You have a problem which you need to solve using legal tools, legal analysis. That is why there's this way to think. But it's in the context of the applicable law and the facts of a certain situation. Once you've learned that knowledge, you will then apply skills. You can't get skills without knowledge. And there's a whole lot of essential skills that I'm going to show you, at least the basic idea, because you will need to practice. You will need to apply what I'm teaching you. The first thing is you'll work through a legal problem in an organized and systematic way. There's their logic, there's their approach. You will interpret, understand, and identify relevant facts which arise from a particular description of a particular situation or incident. You will be able to identify the legal issue or issues which arise from that incident. You will learn how to identify the correct legislation and rules which apply to that incident. You'll be able to distinguish, huge area, all right? Distinguish facts from one incident to another, one court decision to another. You will be able to apply legislation and case law to the incident. And in fact, I'll show you how to research and find case law. And then finally, the whole idea is that you'll then be able to give advice to clients or members of your union or your employer organization or to other third parties who might approach you for assistance. So those are the skills you will learn. Over above all of that, or through it, immersed through it, is the values that I hope to impart. The first is the ability to think logically. I've said that a few times already. Absolutely key. The ability to think critically. Now, one of the things I'm trying to do is to take away the idea that there is a right answer to a problem. In law, you will find that there are a number of ways of looking at a particular problem. I'm showing you a best practice approach, but it's based on critical thinking through a particular problem. To evaluate various solutions, options that arise, should you do this, should you do that, why? And to understand the concept of fairness. Now, fairness imbues our entire labor law, and it's very important that you have some handle on what that actually means. How will you learn? Well, I've adopted a certain method which I found over the years is probably the best way to impart knowledge and skills. First of all, there's slides. I mean, we're doing as we are now. Slides, the video, which we're doing now, and then there's a workbook. And in the workbook, there's exercises and so on that you will follow along with. Now, why have I decided to use that? Because, well, you need to download the workbook before beginning. Why is there a workbook? Because it helps you to listen. It helps you to follow along with the discussion as I'm talking, as I'm showing you things through the video. And then it helps you to remember, to retain information by writing down. Now, that's a key part of learning. Now, a lot of people at the moment are like, oh, no, you need to have everything digitally. That's not the case. The research is showing very clearly that unless there's a physical part of learning of writing down, students do not retain that information. So writing down is very key to this process of learning. And then finally, the workbook, once you've completed it, the workbook becomes your notes for the course. So it'll help you later on when you think, oh, what have I done there? Okay, and you can look up what you have learned. So it becomes a practical tool for you in the future. Then let's look at, well, how to use the workbook. So as I said, you need to download the workbook before you begin. Let's have a look at the workbook and I'll show you how to use it. Okay, I've got you've been through the objectives, etc., covers all that kind of stuff for you, and then it shows you how to use the workbook. Basically what you'll see is the workbook contains portion of a text which are missing, replaced by underlining words in the slides. So for example, using the workbook, we go to one portion of it. You'll see the workbook as you skim through it, as you look through it. You'll see that there are those lines there, missing words. So there are a number there. So what happens? Well, you look at the slide as you're going along. So let's have a look at that particular slide. If you look at that slide, you will see as you're going along through the course, we're dealing with a section on sources of facts. And you'll see there that there are underlined words. Now those underlined words is what you will fill in on the workbook. So the words that are underlined will be filled in by you as you're going along, as you're listening into the workbook. They are often, I've tried hard to make those words the kind of key aspect of a particular point that is in the slide as we're going through the process. So that's how you will use the workbook in this course.